Hi, everybody. Welcome to PAX Online, and welcome to our panel here with the crew from DualShockers.com. I am Logan Moore, the managing editor at DualShockers, and today we are going to talk about Persona 6, a game that is not announced yet, but a game that will surely be coming in the future that we have some ideas about. So joining us on our panel today is our staff from DualShockers.com as well. Going down the list here, we've got in the Joker mask from Persona 5, from the Persona 5 Royal Special Edition or Limited Edition, Collector's Edition, whatever. Scott White is here. Scott, how's it going?
Doing well. And don't you mean Persona 5 Royale?
Yeah. That's an inside joke that some commenters will get over at DualShockers. We've also got Ryan Meitzler is with us as well. Ryan, how are you doing?
Looking cool, Joker.
Well, there you go. Is it Funko Pop?
It is the Joker Funko Pop. So
you're degenerate. Nick Blain is here with us as well, recording all this. Nick, how's it going?
You never saw it coming. Let me tell you.
Somebody had to make that joke in the opening. I'm glad somebody did.
There. I had to go for it, you know?
The master of, and then our two Persona masters, probably we've saved for last. Allisa James is here as well, who reviewed Persona 5 Royal for us earlier this year. Allisa, how are you doing?
Doing good, thanks. How's everyone doing here?
I'm not doing too bad. Iyane is here as well. Iyane Agossah is with us, who also is the master of all things Persona. Iyane, how are you doing?
Hi everyone, it's Iyane, news editor at DualShockers. The guys are just writing about Japanese games no one cares about. Nice to meet you.
Again, this panel is going to look at, as I said at the top, we're going to be talking about Persona the whole time. And the title of this panel is pretty self-explanatory, what we want to see in Persona 6. As I said, this is a game that Atlus has not announced yet, but it is a game that, given the success of Persona 5, surely will be announced at some point. Before we get into talking too much, though, about what we would like to see in a future installment in the Persona series, I want to get a brief rundown from each of you about your familiarity with the series, just what all games you've played. I mean, we are on mainline installments, I guess, technically, if we're counting the two twos in the franchise. How many of them each have you guys played and all that? We can go around the table again. I guess I'll start, though. I'm probably the newest Persona convert here amongst this panel. I've played about a third of Persona 4, and I need to go back to it, honestly. And then Persona 5 is something I've known that I would love for years and years and years. And then it got to the point where Royal was announced, and I was like, okay, I just need to not play 5 now and hold out for Royal. And so I've been slowly inching my way through 5 this year, and definitely one of my favorite games I've played in quite some time. So I'm definitely the Persona novice here amongst this crew, but I love the series, and I'm like totally dedicated. I'm going to load up my PlayStation Vita and go back and visit all of the old ones, I think, at some point in time, whenever I get some time. Scott, how familiar are you with this series, and how many of them have you played?
I'm pretty familiar with it. I got my start renting Persona 2 Eternal Punishment for PlayStation 1 back in the day. I've played and own all of them. But I've actually only beaten Persona 1 and Persona 5 and 5 Royal. So I actually haven't beaten the 2 duology yet, 3 or 4. So
interesting. Ryan, what about yourself? I know you've been playing through Royal lately as well.
Yeah, I think like I'm more of a recent convert to Persona. I first got into the series 4 years ago with Persona 4 Golden on Vita, because that was a game that like seemingly everyone was saying like you need to play this if you have a Vita. So I picked it up for $10 in a PSN sale just as like a to try it and see if I would like it, and I could not get enough of it. So I played that. I played Persona 3 Portable last year, and I'm playing Persona 5 Royal right now. I'm in the new semester, so I should be finishing it within the next couple weeks because I've been meaning to play that game for a long time.
Okay, Nick, you're rocking the Persona 5 shirt, I think.
Man, Persona 5, yeah, it's a kind of funny collaboration Persona shirt. I had to wear it to represent. But yes, Persona 5 is my second favorite game of all time, underneath, of course, Kingdom Hearts 2. But yes, I got started similar to Ryan, where I heard all the buzz about Persona 4 Golden on the Vita back in the day, and I bought it, and I skipped a couple of classes in college just to finish my high school career in Persona 4. But
Allisa, I know you are the most familiar with not only Persona, but the series it's tangentially tied to, with Shin Megami Tensei. So you are probably have more knowledge about all of this than maybe any of us here, other than Iyane, potentially. But yeah, what's your familiarity level with the series?
Okay, so I actually started with Persona 3 in college, and it's a little shameful, but the sole reason I played it was because I love the idea of teenagers summoning like demons by shooting themselves in the head, and it was just so I just like picked it up on a whim, like on a mall trip, fell in love with it. So it was unlike any other RPG I ever played in my life, and then I just quickly started playing any other Persona game I could. So Persona 1, both Persona 2s. I ended up, of course, playing Persona 4, 5. And then I got into, of course, the mainline series as well. So, yeah, ever since then, just addicted.
Iyane, what about yourself?
As for me, well, I was being into anime and Japanese stuff. So when Persona 3 released in France, I was pretty hyped about it, but I actually didn't own a PS2. Like, I owned one, but we landed to one of our cousins, and then we never got it back, like typical story in African Asian households. So yeah, I really wanted to play the game. So when Persona 4 got out, I still didn't have a PS2, so I actually played it like years later. I think it was in 2011 or something, and I emulated it. I played it on my PC one summer. I really liked it, so I was super hyped for Persona 5 when it released. Now, basically, Persona 5 is my favorite. I really like the story, and I'm not gonna spoil stuff, but I really like the themes and stuff in Persona 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems like, I don't think this is too uncommon, especially for people who are Persona fans nowadays, but most of us seem like we have gotten in with the franchise somewhere between 3, 4, and 5. Which is, again, that's totally normal because 1, 2, and 2 are pretty they're popular in their own right, but they are a little bit different from what 3
they're
kicked
much
off.
closer to the mainline SMT style.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess before we get into the larger discussion about Persona 6 as a whole, and again, what we want to see there, I think it's important right now to talk about kind of where the series is at, because again, we've mentioned that Persona has blown up the past few years, largely thanks to Persona 5. Again, the other entries were popular in their own right, but Persona 5 really made the game more popular in the West than it ever has been before. So we're at the height of Persona hype, but simultaneously Atlus is also kind of working on reintegrating Shin Megami Tensei in more of a mainline fashion. So it's been interesting to see how these two series are going to be living more congruently across one another in the future. And they always have been, but again, Persona, it's kind of a jokes and memes amongst the community that Persona fans aren't aware of what Shin Megami Tensei is, and they don't actually know the differences between the two, or they're not aware of they think they're two separate entities when they are, but they aren't at the same time. All right, so yeah, Persona 6, again, something we don't know about, but something that will surely be coming given the franchise's popularity. There's a whole lot of things that we could obviously want in a future installment, and I'm sure we've all come with plenty of our own ideas here. But I think it's first important to kind of talk about the main things that the franchise has tied to it, the things like, social links and the day cycle, going to school and things like that. There are these pillars of the Persona franchise that have always been there in all of the entries in some way, shape, or form. I guess in a general sense, is that something that you guys want to see returning in future installments or in a Persona 6? Is that something you would like to see them continue with, or would you like to see them shake up that generalized formula a little bit more? Nick, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just, I'm gonna come in. I kind of, the one thing I really think that they could do, like, tackle a little bit more difficult subjects with is by going like the college route, because it's traditionally been high school, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah.
To kind of tackle the bigger issues, and of course, like the kind of, as the controversy from Persona 5, like the kind of not anti-gay, but also like not tackling that subject a little bit more. Like have you be able to go into different confidants and be like, all right, I really like you, we're dating, like, or whatever, like the like people stand like Ryuji and Yusuke from 5. I think that would be something really cool, just to open it up, to so many other people to see themselves in it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. In terms of the social links and confidants, honestly, at this point, I would love to see them develop like a brand new social system altogether, because I feel like confidants, as much as I enjoyed them in Persona 5, I feel like it really showed that that's as far as you can really push them. Like there's really nothing new or exciting that can be done with that same system. And I want them to keep the social aspect, because that's like the single most important defining trait of the Persona series. But I feel like it'd be a good idea if they could figure out a way, create like kind of a brand new mechanic altogether that functions differently, so it feels fresh and new, versus just us getting kind of like another social link,
same thing but called something different.
And more integrated in the plot, I think, would be a big thing, because I think that's a big problem too with them, which is why they feel kind of stagnant, is that, when you have this character development going on in these social links or confidants, which are great, but then you don't really see that reflected in the main story. I think that's kind of a problem, especially now we have hardware where we could do that. So I would love to see if we have a social system that really integrates all that development in the story, and you see the character's mainline plot actually growing alongside, you actually dealing with them on the side.
Yeah, I mean, to jump in, I think this was one of the big broad ideas that I had for a future installment, is to introduce more of the relationships and even the larger team that you assemble with, like, earlier in the story, because I don't think it's a problem with 4 or 3, 4, or 5 that they kind of give you drip feed of new relationships and new characters coming in. I think that kind of keeps the carrot on the stick with you wanting to continue playing and continue to meet new people. But I think if they introduced more relationships up front, or more characters to interact with up front, and then your relationship could develop over the course of the entire game, because again, like in vanilla P5 specifically, like what people like, who are some of the late game people you get in that game, like Haru and stuff like that, like you don't get to develop relationships as much with them, because they just arrive so late in the story.
Exactly.
So yeah, I feel like if they introduced some of the social links and confidants a bit earlier, and then just let you grow on them from there, I think that would be good. I don't know. Again, I think the current system is also great because it makes you want to continue pushing along, so that you do meet more people. So maybe they could find a way to still keep that incentive alive, while also letting you kind of from the outset, I don't know, dump more on you at the beginning of the game, rather than slowly rolling it out over the course of 50 hours. And I know that would be a very gaudy opening 10 hours, I'm sure, but I think that's one thing that they could do to potentially mix up the formula a little bit.
Right.
I would like to see... go ahead.
I was just going to comment and say, well, especially with Persona 5 kind of being the Final Fantasy 7 of the franchise, where people are coming in and kind of can understand it, like to be able to make Persona 6 a little bit more out there, a little bit more like not challenging stuff, but taking stuff and like working with it, you know, and trying to update it and to be able to get the social links a little bit more improved and the activities a little bit more, you know, out there and throwing more at you because Atlus now knows, oh, you've played Persona 5, you understand what Persona is, here you go. Like there's not a lot of people that are going to be jumping in.
I agree, yeah.
I think a cool avenue that they could explore and kind of evolve the confidant system is kind of connect the confidants together so it doesn't feel like all these individual tendrils that have no impact on any of the others. Like, say if you level up these two confidants, maybe you'll take them both out, or you'll go out and hang out with both of them, and because you have X rank in both, that might unlock a special ability because those two have become friends and kind of expand that way. Because right now I think all the confidants, while they have cool stories, they're so disconnected from everything else. I would like to see the confidants and those side stories kind of start branching together and see what combinations and possibilities can come from that, be it upgraded skills like enhanced things or just completely brand new options for combat or buffs or things like that, and make it so the player actually has to choose which of these they have to go on, and not that they can necessarily max out every confidant or these branching confidants or connected confidants in each playthrough. Like, give some sense of choice, like that their choice matters. Let them finish an entire story of these of all the confidants in the story, but in a single playthrough. But these more refined and kind of connecting paths maybe make where you can only do so many per playthrough, I think would be an interesting way to continue to evolve confidants.
Yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with Scott here. Like, one of my favorite events in Persona 5 is the one in summer, like when you go fishing with Ryuji and Kawakami Sensei. You don't see that much stuff like that, the characters and the side characters interacting with each other. It's definitely something they could do in the future. Another thing I wanted to come back to is the high school setting. I definitely think they could change that too, but it's kind of hard because like it's like the traditional setting of the series, and plus Atlus is a Japanese company, so they tend to not change things, you know. So I really want them to change it, and I'm sure some developers at the studio want to change it too, but I don't think it's gonna happen, sadly.
Well, I mean, that brings me to a good point, because I wanted to ask you guys, like, what stuff from, I mean, we kind of got on the social links thing here, but what elements from the past games do you guys want to continue? Because personally, I don't think you can call it a Persona game when it's not in the school setting, because they all have been. So I definitely think that's going to come back, but that's something I also absolutely wouldn't want to see like changed either. Like if they decided to put you, I think that can apply for high school. I would be fine with it either way. But if they decide to completely mix up that aspect of it, I don't know how I would feel about it personally. Is there any other things from like that are core tenets of the series that you guys would absolutely like to see them continue to stick with, though?
One thing I would like to see them bring back, and I think they only did it in Persona 1. They might have done it in 2. It's been a bit. I would like to have party members like Persona users that you miss. Like, you could pick up certain party members, but if you picked up X character, like, it would lock out and you wouldn't be able to recruit Y character. I would like that aspect, because kind of going back to the join confidant idea, it gives each playthrough and the choices you make, I feel, much more impact, and it rewards replayability and expanding and exploring other avenues. That was just one aspect I really, really liked about Persona 1 and going back and replaying it, because I could get X character because I didn't get the previous playthrough. That's one thing I would really like to see come back.
And I totally agree with Scott on that. I think that'd be great. I think it also would address the issue that when you have those like late game characters like Naoto or Haru that come in so late, so they don't get a lot of screen time compared to the other characters. I think creating that kind of system where you have your party set up in the beginning allows for that core party to actually get their screen time, so they can have more time to interact with the other characters. You connect with them. From the beginning of the game, you have the entire game to connect with them, and they all get their fair share. 'Cause I think that was something that Persona 1 really excelled at. Like, all the characters were equally involved in the plot, and they all talked with each other. They all had their own, like, points, and it was really interesting. And then it also, added some great replayability, because then you could go back, play it again, and try to pursue different characters, including, like, more hidden options. So I would also love to see fusion spells come back, specifically like from Persona 2. And Persona 4, I like the Golden. I really like them as well, but I just really like fusion spells from Persona 2. So I just love the idea of like these cool combination attacks like between party members, and just it's such a cool little like extra part of the system, and would love to see that. As for the high school setting, I feel like I would love to see college as well, but I think if you wanted to keep high school, I think something that you could do is change the setting, like the time period. So maybe instead of doing modern, why not kind of tackle a different time period in high school? Like, something that I would want to see personally is maybe like 1950s, 60s Japan, kind of that period of rapid advancement before the Olympic Games. So that was like a huge period of time of like, of that whole old versus new, and a lot of turmoil with students, and going through that huge change in their society and culture. And that would be an amazing theme to explore, as well as a lot of racial tensions, because a lot of mixed kids from World War II. You could have some really great, like, mature themes to explore in that time period, and still set it in high school with high school kids, and keep that setting, but like freshen it up with like something brand new as well.
And bring Raito in, because I feel like Raito would be perfect in that setting. But I'm curious, in regards to the high school, what would you guys think if the Persona cast were teachers in the high school?
I like that.
I mean, it could definitely flip the formula on its head, kind of like we're talking about, where it's you're sticking with the same general thing, but
a whole different perspective, different worries, concerns.
Different perspective. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I think that would be bizarre on Atlus's part, given how they've portrayed some of the teachers in some of the other installments.
Yeah.
Like Persona 4's teacher comes to mind specifically, the guy who insults you the entire game.
Oh,
like, they've always been shown. I mean, I get that Persona 5 has a couple different tastes on display a couple different characteristics with some of the teachers, but I feel like most of the time they've been portrayed as like figures of authority more so than like actual friends or easygoing people. And Kawakami is like kind of one of the only people that bucks that trend that I can think of. It'd be interesting, but it would definitely fly in the face of a lot of the past games as well.
Yeah, I think for me, like, a lot of what I love about Persona is the fact that it does take place in like a contemporary time period, because like, especially compared to a lot of JRPGs, they're usually sort of in like a fantasy setting or something like that. It's like a completely different, like, sort of like breath of fresh air that I really enjoy about the city, especially because it's so rooted in Japanese culture. I think for me, one of the most interesting things I'd really like to see, maybe in whatever they end up doing with Persona 6, is bringing back in Persona 3 Portable how they have the option of having a male and a female main character. I think would be really interesting, whether either they gave you the option to play as either a male or female the whole way through, or maybe if they had two protagonists and you kind of like switch between them. I think that'd be interesting, because as much as like I love Persona 5 Royal, I do think at points the game kind of drags, because you are playing as Joker the whole time and you're having these relationships with these like characters throughout the whole game. It might be interesting maybe to have two protagonists, and then I think like Allisa and Scott said, that could kind of change the dynamics a bit of the social links or the confidants. Because then maybe like with one protagonist you're getting to experience like one group of characters, and then the other protagonist you're getting to have relationships with other another set of characters, and then maybe they could like interweave and stuff like that. But I think that would sort of maybe be an interesting direction if they decide to do that.
Well, that's kind of a larger talking point I wanted to kind of throw out there to all of you. How, because especially since we've brought up like more replayable aspects, like different characters that you might not necessarily come across in one playthrough, but you would in another, or maybe different protagonists. How do you guys feel about a Persona that does 5 feels very linear in a lot of senses, and like you can do New Game Plus and stuff like that, but the things you're really tacking on in those extra runs are like filling out your social links and things like that. How would you feel about a Persona experience that is like maybe half as long as something like Persona 5, but
so
it
only
is
70
like
hours
twice...
instead of 140?
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, because Persona 5 is very linear, but it's very long, but it's also very linear. So if you replay it, I don't feel like you're gleaning anything drastically different, especially in regards to the story. So if they created a more replayable Persona style game, is that something that you guys would particularly want, or do you like how long and direct the storytelling is in something like 5?
All I can say is, man, we want a hardcore as hell Persona game. Let me tell you, Scott's over here like, man, I just need to replay this 100-hour RPG 5 different times. I love it. I think that I think like what you said, Logan. I think if it were shorter and allowed us to be a little bit more open with our choices and have to go through a couple playthroughs, I think it would kind of invigorate it to where like you would actually want to go, especially for the trophy hunters and trying to see everything. Whereas with this, like with the previous games, you can kind of just like see what the world has, or at least glimpse what the world has to offer. And try out each confidant. Whereas, like, especially if we do the different protagonist thing, where separate protagonists get different social links, I think that would be like, you just have 2 different experiences. And I think that would be very, a very cool aspect of it.
Also, shout out real quick to the original Persona for having 2 completely different story routes you can do with totally different final bosses, quests, locations. It's just like,
I love that.
Do you want to go this story or this story?
Exactly. And they even let up one into the other, but now, of course, the characters would be like super overpowered for the main character.
So each Persona, I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit too. Allisa specifically mentioned an idea for like a time period or some themes that they could play around with. Each of at least everything, Persona 3, 4, and 5 specifically have some very specific themes or just ideas behind them. Again, Persona 4 is more of a detective mystery style game, and 5's like this gentleman thief kind of buddy adventure or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Is there anything specific in that line that you'd like to see from 6? A specific theme that you can think of that you'd like them to play with? Do you want them to bring back blowing out their personas out of their head with guns?
I would like in Persona 6 or a future one where the Persona cast loses, like halfway through, kind of like a Final Fantasy VI style, where the bad guy like wins, and maybe like the second half or the last quarter or third or whatever, it's the team kind of regathering back together and like, okay, we have to fix this. Maybe, and you could play it on with the whole cocky, kind of arrogant high schooler mentality. It's like, oh, we're invincible, we can't lose. It's like, we got this, and then they don't got this, and then things really get bad and they lose or something. I don't know, but that would be really interesting to see. High
Scott,
schoolers.
did you just make Avengers Infinity War and Endgame in Persona? I'm just like, in my brain, I'm just realizing like, well,
Thanos is the main.
I was
bad
going
guy
more
of
Final
Persona
Fantasy VI style. Than Avengers. Like, I do have an Avengers Endgame theme, but it's more like the other Persona cast like make cameos and like they have to unite for some like super crazy demon crazy threat. But I'm going like just the high schoolers get cocky, they lose, they have to figure something out, and then whether it's repent or climbing, like picking yourself back up could be kind of the theme. Like, you fall, well, pick yourself back up and keep going, press on, or I don't know. That would be interesting to me. I love where the good guys lose before they win.
If we get a Portals moment in Persona 6 where just like every single Persona character comes out, we see Eddie coming out. Oh, that would be great.
I do think, as far as like tying in, I mean, that's like a joke that you're making about tying in the larger franchises, but I think tying things back into the larger series a little bit would be something smart that they could do. Especially because the main through lines in all of the games have been like mainly Igor and stuff like that. Obviously, he's in all of them. But I feel like they've stopped playing around as much with the deeper lore involving those characters, and maybe they could dive into that a little bit more. I know the original games in the franchise really played around with that, and I know that stuff is also not tied directly to Shin Megami Tensei, but it is more closely related to those kind of roots of the spinoff. So I think if they spent more time honing in on that stuff, it could maybe get a little too deep and not as accessible for some people, because then they feel like, oh, I got to go back and play these PS1 era JRPGs now to totally understand what's going on. So I understand that like a lot of accessibility would be potentially lost there, but I think it would be cool if they could find a way to largely tie in the games. I don't know, make the lines between each of them a little bit more obvious. Or make it feel like they are all taking place in the same universe, which is always a given. Obviously, again, a lot of same characters show up in all of the same games, but it's never explicit.
I know for a while, Yusuke, I read or watched in a video that Yusuke was originally supposed to, like, the idea behind him was he was a transfer student from, I think, Persona 3's high school. Like, that was they were going to go, but they opted to just make him an art student instead.
Oh, okay.
I think that was for the better. I love Yusuke. He's the best.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. We've touched on a lot of broad things. Again, I'm sure you all brought in a list of your own things. I feel like we can kind of open it up at this point if there's anything specific each of you want to hone in on that you surely came in with. In a general sense, what do you want to see from Persona 6 that I'm sure you have ideas for?
So I think for me, it's just because alongside, before I started playing Persona 5 Royal, I've been starting the Yakuza series, and I've been playing those. I played the first 3 games in that series. I think it's just interesting seeing the parallels between those games, because obviously they're like very heavily rooted in Japanese culture, and like are designed to show you sort of like what city life is like in Japan. Obviously fictional, but like inspired by real life. And so I think it's interesting that like with Yakuza, like you're exploring this sort of like dense city environment. You have all these activities to do. Like you can go, you can go play all these games and all that. So I think it'd be interesting with like Persona, because you have all the options of like hanging out with your friends, going to they added like the darts game, pool, like all that stuff. So it'd be interesting maybe if they experimented a little more with like that interactivity, like maybe in the activities that you can do where you can go, I don't know, like I guess rather than just going to the thing and be like, okay, you got points for playing pool with your friends, like giving you sort of more to do in those cities and make the cities like feel a little more alive. And I know like Persona 5 Royal especially like adds a ton of like different things you can do, but I think maybe making the cities feel a little more alive and like expanding on what you can do in them I think might be interesting. But also like I just have Yakuza on the brain lately, so yeah.
Right.
Maybe give Kiryu and Majima a cameo in Persona. Have them show up as social links you can have.
Have them show up as personas, man.
Yeah, as personas. Yeah, like
you
Majima just
Majima comes out. Does a dance.
For me, I also, as a big fan of the earlier Persona games, I would love to see some of that lore come back. Specifically, like Philemon and the main antagonist from those first like 3 Persona games. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name. I never get it right.
Bring Evil Joker back.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love to see that again, because that there was kind of a little cliffhanger thing where he was essentially like that he's gonna return someday, and it's like, why don't we bring that back in again? And then bringing in Philemon, because Philemon is Igor's master, so you can easily tie that in and have him as like the main person who you deal with, and who introduces you to the Persona like system and all that instead, and tie it back in with like that earlier Joker antagonist, and it would be really cool. And you could bring back some of the, maybe have like a few cameos from like the Persona 1 and 2 cast, because even though it's a little complicated, but there was kind of a split in timelines. But we do know that those characters exist in this timeline that 3, 4, and 5 are in. So you could bring them back, have them awaken. It would be pretty cool. Like a nice like shout out for people who are like old fans. But I feel like you could make it easily accessible too, because it would be kind of like you would have to reintroduce all these characters again and kind of reestablish them as like, as players. So I think that'd be a good way to tie everything in. Yeah.
Anybody else got any broad ideas?
One of the best things about Persona is the music. You listen to Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5. Give us some like new music that people aren't like Persona 5 we got acid jazz. Like we got this kind of not exactly mainstream genre of music. Personally for me, let's go some future funk. You know what I mean? Like let's get some, like anime ass sounding guys in the background, and just like it still got that jazzy theme. Kind of mix Persona 4 and 5's music together and just make it great. Make a great little soundtrack.
Let's just do a Screamo soundtrack. Just Screamo.
Dude, if we just get like August Burns Red for the next Persona.
I mean, personally, to jump in here, I know Ian, do you want to talk? I know you were about to mention something a second ago.
Yeah, so I have multiple ideas I'd like to see. Basically, what I want with future Persona games is for Atlus to keep the tradition and keep what they're doing, but to try and do it more with more ambition and with more budget. Because like when you think about it, Persona 5 first released in 2016, so it was in development for a pretty long while. And I think it was before they got bought over by Sega and stuff. So what I want to see now is to see what Atlus could do with more leeway and with more power. And for example, I'm sure that there are plenty of ideas they want to do, but they can't do for budget reasons or for other reasons, like a female protagonist. Like if you check the Persona 5 art book, you can see there are some rough drafts for a female protagonist, but it didn't make the cut. It's the kind of stuff they definitely want to do, and I think it'd be good too, because a lot of people I won't say Atlus is like my favorite game studio either, but like a lot of people give them some like they're pretty mean. Like, Atlus never wants to do female protagonists. I'm sure they want to do it, but they just can't, that's the kind of thing I want to see them do. And another thing that's definitely come around is when they do the cast of the characters, they always keep like some of the same stereotypes. Like I wouldn't say Yosuke and Ryuji in Persona 5 and in Persona 4 and 5 are the same character, but they're slightly similar. But at the same time, they have their own personality. I'm not sure to explain that, because at the beginning they feel like you think they're the comedy relief, they're idiots like kind of guys, but you can see they're pretty nice and they have a lot of depth in their personality. So what Persona is good at is making characters seem stereotypical, but then you realize it's not the case at all. And that's one of the things I want to see again for future games. Another thing is like the battle system. I'm pretty sure they're going to keep the turn-based battle system. Again, I'm not like some kind of old school gamer. Action RPG sucks. I like turn-based or nothing. I'm not the kind of gamer like that, but I definitely would love to keep the weakness battle system of the series. And another thing is each game so far has a mascot like character, and Persona 4 as a Kuma Teddy, Persona 5 was Morgana, but for Persona 6, I'm not sure they're going to do that again because one idea I have is that when you think about it, Persona 5, Morgana in Persona 5 is voiced by Ikue Otani, which is the voice of Pikachu, and she's like the best voice ever you can get for a mascot character. So now that they picked her out, I don't think they're going to do the mascot thing again. So I'm pretty sure they're going to change that and go for a key character instead, like Aegis in Persona 3. That kind of character they're going to do instead of a mascot like animal character.
They're leaving too much money on the table though if they don't do a mascot. Think of all the merchandising sells itself.
Who will turn into a car? I mean,
Who will literally be a human?
Too, like.
Oh god.
You brought up some things I know we definitely haven't talked about, namely gameplay. I feel like because gameplay is very similar throughout the series. I feel like I've been trying to think of ways that they could improve on what was introduced in 5. I think the biggest complaint I have about 5's gameplay is not even the general structure of it personally, but I mean, before we went live here with this panel, we were kind of talking amongst ourselves, and it's just kind of how the gameplay, how they integrate it with certain boss fights and things like that aren't always great, especially in Persona 5 in particular. There are a few boss fights in the game that are not ideal by any means.
Yeah.
And I think it's just trying to find a way to adapt the gameplay system that they already have, which I think largely works very well in just doing more interesting things with it, especially in the realm of bosses. But again, bosses are so few and far between in those games. That I don't think it's ever like it's not that huge of an issue. But if they could find some more creative things to do with the bosses in Persona 6, that would be great. I think personally too, to go on with, I know I never answered the broad question. I think this is a bold thing, and I don't know if Atlus would do this by any means, but I think if they took the setting out of Japan, they could do some very interesting things. Because when I think about what they could do with Persona 6, I feel like they've kind of covered the different areas of, especially in 3, 4, and 5. Like 4 you had, or 3 you had like a boarding school, 4 you had a high school in a small town, and then 5 you had a high school in an inner city. And I'm trying to think about what they adapt and do next, and I really can't think of how they, again, I'm not super intimately familiar with Japan's school structure, but I can't think of how they mix that up again to make it feel fresh once again. And I think the freshest thing they could do is just throw it in a completely different country or something like that. Like maybe make you a Japanese student who again is transferring to another school, but you're transferring out of country or something like that. And I don't know, put it in America. I'm an American guy. But
I just
put my
picture like
in America.
Chuck Stonewaller, Dallas football player, quarterback extraordinaire, always wears a cowboy hat.
I mean, you're not one of them JRPG characters, are you?
To Logan's point, I think, like, you know, obviously, like, there's that section of Persona 5 where you go to Hawaii for a little bit. So, like, maybe they could experiment with something like that. Like, maybe if it's only, like, for a section of the game, like, taking you to other parts of the world or something like that might be interesting, just to, like, give some diversity. Because, yeah, I mean, like, I love the fact that the Persona series is so, like, Japanese culture focused, but I think it would be interesting maybe to see how they adapt that to like either another culture or another setting or something like that. So yeah, I mean that's something they could definitely do.
I guess make your Persona 6 protagonist homeschool. There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
Online learning. It's the age of COVID and virtual learning. Persona users turn into the Digidestined. So,
oh my god!
I mean, really, Digidestined they're basically just digital Persona users.
The dream.
Digimon are digital personas.
So I know we've only got about 10 or 15 minutes left here, so there are a few other rapid fire things I did want to run through. Iyane brought up one, which I wanted to kind of pose to everybody, is that obviously Persona 6 is going to, unless they pull up Persona 5 and put it on last-gen hardware for some reason, which I don't envision happening, it's going to be next-gen. It's going to probably be on PS5, which means they can do some new things with the hardware. As of when we're recording this, we still have not seen a lot of games in action on the new hardware, so we don't have great ideas of what they can do with the new hardware. Just some broad ideas, I feel like. But I mean, mixed with combined with the fact that we're about to jump to a new generation of game consoles. Plus, as Ian also said, Atlus has way more money now to spend because Persona is now a breadwinner for Sega, and they belong to Sega now, so they've got more money to pull from. Is there anything, a sort of grander idea that you can think of for Persona that you would want them to do? I think the voice acting is the most notable thing, just making the game fully voiced in every single instance, which would take a lot of time, but they assumedly have the time and money to make something like that work in the future, I think. Anything broad that you can think of that they can now do with more money and more resources and time?
For me, I think, and this is kind of going back to a point I had made before about the social link, but I think in general, because, we're already dealing with stronger hardware and it's going to get stronger now, they can afford to integrate things way more. Like, instead of kind of having a very separate sort of formulaic thing where, like, everything's completely separate, like the social links are separate from the main plot, and the school schedule is separate from the story beats, and the decisions you make, outside of those story beats are separate from that. Why not integrate everything together? So it's all this kind of like all these choices that you make are significant. Like, choices you may make and how you spend your time affect how the plot may unfold. The choices you make on what people you spend time with, how you develop them and their storylines and the personalities have a major impact on how they behave in the main plot. Like, if you have, let's say, for instance, you reverse a social link, that has a direct negative impact on how the story, may unfold later on when it starts getting focused on them. Like, there's a lot of cool things that I feel like you could do if you integrated things more, made those choices feel like they have more weight. And the hardware, I think, would support that pretty easily. We're not on like PS2 hardware where you have to separate things because, everything was kind of weak. Now you can have that kind of thing ongoing and and running in the background where the game actually keeps track of these. And we've seen other games do it too, so it'd be really great, to see Atlus get ambitious about that as well and like do that. I also feel like on the gameplay, I feel like it'd be really interesting if they changed it up from the one more system, because I feel like that they've kind of stretched it as far as they could. So I would love to see them kind of develop like a new sort of turn-based combat system, maybe something a little closer to like the press turn system, because press turn is so like malleable. There's so many cool things you can do with it, and it's so precise strategically, and I think that would also address a lot of the boss imbalances that I think you get because the one more system is so like a wishy-washy at times, so the mechanics kind of mess up a little bit, I've noticed. But I think, if they spent the time to rebuilding a new battle system that was more precise and allowed for even more strategic depth, I think that would be a great payoff as well.
Press turn, for those that haven't played SMT, the mainline games, it's their version of kind of the once more, where if you hit an enemy with their weakness, it adds an additional turn to your pool, basically. So.
Yeah, and then you have the option as well, like if you want to pass a turn over to other party members, you can do that. So you can actually change the turn order of your party members if you feel like to actually follow up with this kind of attack, or I need to heal right now, so let me pass it to my healer instead. And you can kind of customize it that way too, and it allows for a lot of really cool customization, like strategy options that you don't have so much in one more system.
For sure. Anybody else have any wide-ranging ideas for next-gen style Persona?
I think the only thing I guess I would be interested to see, like, just because with so many other like JRPG sort of series, like, we saw with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Dragon Quest XI did this too, I guess, transitioning more like an action RPG style thing. So I guess it'd be interesting maybe to see, like, if Persona 6, like, if they did go in that direction. I don't know if I necessarily want that, because I do like the turn-based combat of Persona. Like, I think it stands out compared to like every other series kind of transitioning and thing. But I think it would be interesting, I guess, if they, especially with Persona 5 Scramble coming out, which I know is like slightly different because it's like
coming out?
I hope so, we'll see.
I mean, it's out somewhere, you know what I mean?
But yeah, I think with that, like, being more of an action game, like maybe it would be interesting to see like what a sort of Persona action RPG style thing would look like, just because, granted, like every other sort of RPG like that is sort of transitioning to that style of combat.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, to get the attention of like Western audiences too.
I think with the power of the Series X and the PlayStation 5 or PCs at the time, I think they'll finally be able to incorporate a green color scheme. I think the color will be green. I think there will be enough power. I mean, PS2, it was buckling under the blue and yellow color motifs. I think PS4, they pushed it even further with the red. I think with this next generation, they can finally hit green.
I'm on board with orange. This is what I'm backing for the official color of sticks. I want orange.
My theory is purple, because they've done all the primary colors, and if you mix them all together, you get purple.
Wasn't purple the color scheme for Persona Q, though?
Well, red was the scheme for Persona 2, so they reused that.
There you go. I'm gonna go the orange train.
I'm going with pink. I feel like we need to get bold. I think
a nice millennial pink in there.
Exactly.
How about salmon? Let's go salmon.
The last
there we go. Fancy.
The last thing I wanted to throw in there, and I know this isn't even anything that would require next-gen hardware or anything like that, but the PC version of Persona 4 Golden, they threw in the dual audio, which was great, and I don't know why they haven't done that for the other ones. Again, someone like Iyane, I'm gonna guess you would prefer to play in Japanese audio.
Yeah,
I mean, you already play these games when they come out in Japan anyway. You've already been playing Scramble, so I'm sure you would be totally fine with the dual audio. I would love to turn on the Japanese option. But few last second things we're gonna run through here quickly before we got to wrap up the panel. Would you like to see an expanded version come out after Persona 6 proper comes out, or do we want to finally buck this trend and just stop with it?
Get rid of it.
I think it's gonna happen inevitably.
I think it's gonna happen too.
Like, yeah.
Go back to the duology format. Split it into literally 2 games.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, true.
I really don't want the NES version again. Yeah, not spending 18 euros. Like when you convert yen to euros, it gets really expensive Japanese games. I'm not buying Persona 6 Royal again.
Remakes. Would we like to see any other Persona remakes come before Persona 6? Or do you guys want to, is the next big Persona thing you guys want to see, other than Scramble coming west, which it probably will, would you like to see remakes of the older games before we get to Persona 6, or do you just hope the next big thing they announce at the series is 6 proper?
Yes.
You're shaking your head. What do you want to see? 3 remake?
I legit want people to realize that Persona existed before Persona 3.
Yes.
I want people to play Persona 1 and the 2 duology. Even if it's just PC ports, I mean, that I would be thrilled with PC ports of those.
Yeah.
But like a slightly more modernized version, or like a remaster or enhanced remake of Persona 1 and 2, I would kill for those, because they are games that deserve people to play them, and now that Persona is a bigger series, I think they should.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Persona existed before 3.
It did.
Persona 3 is Persona 1. Persona 4 is
it's like square level
I
of
agree.
renumbering, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly, where I think they're super inaccessible, and as somebody who does love the series and did go back to 3 when I had Golden on the PS Vita, I went back to 3 and I was like, oh, okay, like this is like interesting, different take on this, and I just give me all the Persona. You know what I mean? Like,
make it more accessible, yeah, because the previous ones were excellent.
Remakes of Persona 2, like joining the 2 games together into a single remake would be pretty nice. Yeah. If I remember correctly, the male protagonist in Persona 2, his name is Tatsuya, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It wasn't there. Like, I'm pretty. I heard that from a friend, and also like wasn't it like one of the first games where you could date other guys, other male protagonists?
Yeah. You could actually pick because you had a choice to as a love interest, Maya, Allisa Silverman, or June, and so June was the male option. So that was the first one I know of. They definitely did with S&T series. So that was a big thing.
I'd like this to come back to so that way people will realize like Atlus like isn't maybe the way you think it is. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if I think full blown remakes aren't even needed either. Like bring them a PC. Like we have to. It's insane that the easiest way to play all the Persona games, other than 5 or even 5, I guess you can play through your Vita. All the games are on Vita in some way, and we need to start bringing them over to PC at least, kind of like they did with Golden.
I agree.
I think
Remake them exclusively for Vita.
That would be a wild thing.
Vita lives.
Very last question here, and very quickly, and then we're gonna wrap up. Because speaking of PC, any likelihood they bring Persona 6 to anything other than PS5? Will the Switch crowd finally be satiated? Will the PC crowd are they going to start doing more multi-platform releases? Heck, even Phil Spencer has been way more active in Japan over the past 5 years. Maybe when 6 comes around, it'll be on Xbox hardware too. Do you guys see it releasing on anything other than PS5 in the future?
PC.
Well, I think
Definitely
I
PC.
think PC, because we've already seen they've seen how successful Golden was, and that's an old game. They did one on PC and it sold phenomenally. And they even said later on, because of the success of Persona 4 Golden on PC, now it's actually making them re-examine those policies, and they're going to look into either reporting games, older games, and putting new games on that, at least that platform as well. So I definitely think there's a great chance of it.
More money on the table. They should do it. And again, now that they're tied with Sega, I mean, you would imagine Sega's smart enough to maybe push them in that direction a little bit more.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
porting to Switch and PC, they would just make money. It would just print money.
It would. It would.
Yeah, and 5 already did pretty well on its own, just on PS4.
Yeah.
Well, even just preserving the games in general, to preserve that moment in gaming, to port them to Switch, to port them to PC, this is how the Persona games were before, the ones 3, 4, and 5, and kind of. Yeah.
I agree.
That.
Well, cool. That has been our panel here for Persona 6. Obviously, we've talked for good part of an hour about everything we'd love to see in a future installment. To be totally honest, I'm not really sure how we're going to be able to interact with those of you out there who might be watching this panel, but we will be posting this on our website on DualShockers.com the day it goes live. So if you're watching this as it occurs with PAX Online, come over and interact with us over at DualShockers.com. We'll probably be in the comments talking to some people. You can also interact with us over on Twitter at DualShockers. You can also chat with all of us on our own Twitter accounts, or follow us there if you would like to as well. I'll let everybody sound off with their own Twitter accounts. I am at Moreman12. Scott, where are you at?
At SolidSnake120.
Ryan?
Just my name, at Ryan Meitzler.
Nick?
At Shotgun McPain.
Allisa?
At AJames347.
And Iyane?
Mine is at _Iyane07.
There you go. So if you want to talk to us over on Twitter and tell us what we got right or what we got wrong in this panel, feel free to. Other than that, the only other thing I would say to look out for is we here at DualShockers do have another panel coming up with PAX Online. We will be talking about we'll be making a list of the 10 games we would want to see on the N64 Classic. And so that will be coming up here in the schedule. So if you want to watch more of our staff discuss that topic, you can look in the PAX Online schedule and see when that will be airing. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you joining us here for this, and we hope that you have a good remainder of your day or your week. So take care.